right, let me just see. All right, we've got Joe joining us now too. All right. Brad Reed,
Here.
Andy Kishitz,
Here.
Gerard Ahern,
Present.
Gabriella Mano,
Here.
and Elizabeth Hutchins. Here.
Okay, perfect. Right, so tonight is the continuation from the April 6, 2022 hearing date to hear and act upon the Mallard Lane Active Adult Living Community 40B application, and it's proposed off South Bolton Road. And it's now, as the applicant has revised his plan to be an 8 detached single family home, 6 designated as age restricted and 2 designated as affordable on the 4.7 acres of land. So since the last hearing, we had a flurry of documentation came in between the 19th and the 25th of April. And then we've had some more recent submittals from May 6th through today. So well, it's good to get the information submitted. It will be helpful to get it a little sooner prior to the meeting so we have time to review it, but we'll go through it tonight. Some of the documentation included the Horsley Witten peer review letter on the 19th. The applicant also submitted soils material details, including maps, testing, and soil descriptions. We had a letter from the Bolton tax collector, or an email indicating the applicant had been in arrears in real estate taxes, but it looks like as of a communication from today, that may be resolved. We had a letter on the 21st, or an email from Chief Warren Nelson, who's the police chief, and he had no new comments. We had a letter on the 25th of April from the Bolton Fire Chief, Jeff Legendary. He had some comments about the property being outside the 1,000-foot water source, so either needing an on-site cistern or confirmation of residential sprinklers, and then also information about the propane use on the property, and if it's greater than, I think it was 2,000 gallons stored, that they would have to have a propane permit. So that was the April submissions. And then in May, Joe Pesnola sent in an email confirming some of his observations, which he'll speak to tonight. And then the applicant's engineer submitted updated civil engineering plans. And I think today we get some updated architectural floor plans. So we got a lot to look at tonight, probably. And with that, we'll just kick it over to the applicant to present the new documentation, unless they want to defer to have, well, maybe we go with them first, because then if Horsley Witten has any questions about new materials that they may not have seen since their 19th letter, it may help facilitate their comments. So with that, Jim?
Yeah, I will defer to Greg on the engineering plans. I think we would start there. I think the biggest thing that was missing in the past has been the footprints, the actual footprints that Joe wanted to show that there's adequate parking in the driveways and stuff like that, and we are really encroaching and that kind of thing. So I know Gillis and Roy got that on there. So I'll let Greg explain what he did to do that.
Okay.
Gerard, can we start off with the tax issue, please?
Oh, sure. So that said, there was a letter or an email from Michelle Carlisle indicating that the applicant was in arrears greater than 5 quarters, which is greater than a year. And but I believe, and Valerie can probably confirm, there was an email today indicating the applicant settled that, or not settled it, but resolved that. So can you confirm that, Valerie?
Yes. Yep. It sounds like the applicant was able to stop in today, and the tax collector is satisfied at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. That knocks that off the list, Andy. Thanks. So with that, why don't we have someone speak to the engineering plans?
Good evening, board members. This is Seth Donahoe with Dillis and Roy. Greg Roy is also with me tonight as well. I will start off as I had the pleasure of meeting with you in April, and there were a couple follow-up comments that you had asked us to address. One of the items that was outstanding from peer review was that soil testing needed to be completed in both the septic system and infiltration areas. So on April 8th, I met Mr. Morin over there, as well as the town's Board of Health agent, and we did indeed complete that testing. It found that soils were suitable and there was a very deep depth to groundwater, which required no revisions to the infrastructure that was designed on the plans. One of the other items that we discussed at our last meeting, there were some questions if there was a waiver related to the force main to well distance associated with unit 1, and that's the first unit on the left as you go up proposed road. You asked us if we could improve upon that, and I did agree that we would look at that and see if we could improve upon that. So previously we were asking for a waiver from the town's local regulations to allow the force main to be located within 50 feet of the proposed well. 50 feet is the setback that is required by the town, both their septic and well regulations. We were able to relocate that so that it exceeds that distance now. So that's a waiver that we will no longer require. As Jim mentioned, he did send over actual footprints with the actual unit floor plans on it. So we've updated the civil plans to show that, and that actually resolved an issue with unit 2, where Mr. Pesnola had pointed out that the driveway distance was lacking the 20-foot full distance without blocking a portion of the sidewalk. So unit 2 has been adjusted for the actual floor plans and allows the driveway to be sufficient to allow the 20-foot parked car length, as well as a sidewalk through that portion of the site. That is a very brief summary of the changes to the civil plan. As you mentioned, we sent over late last week a full revised set. As you go through this process tonight, either Greg or I will be happy to address any questions related to those.
At a minimum, you may want to at least plan on presenting them, because where they came in sort of late, they may have come in on Friday. By the time we get them, it's now today, and I know I haven't had a lot of time to deep dive into any of them. So
I'd be happy to go sheet by sheet with them if you'd like me to share screen now.
sure.
Bear with me for one moment.
Mhm.
All right, so hopefully you can see the title sheet before you.
Yep.
That's self-explanatory. So we've been running a running tabulation of revision dates. In this case, all the plans are up to date with a May 5th revision date on them. And then, as I spoke about, we had an existing conditions plan. Previously, we had some soil testing in each of the infiltration areas to allow us to design the systems. We've shown the new test holes and the old test holes, all in their surveyed locations. As I mentioned, those found suitable depth to groundwater and suitable soils for everything that's been proposed on the site. That is the only change to this sheet. And then probably the biggest change is that as we go through these sheets, you'll see the actual unit footprints now. So previously we had house boxes that were intended to fit the actual units. The architect did provide us with units that did fit within those boxes, and we've updated them for the corresponding unit types. In a nutshell, there are 2 different units, and then each of those units have the possibility of being mirrored. So there's a mix of those units on the site here.
So there's two different units. Are there 2 different plans for each unit, or so that, how many plans were there?
So there's 4 floor plans. There's unit A and B. So with unit B essentially being a mirror of unit A, and unit C and D, and the same thing with unit D being a mirror of unit C.
Okay.
And that's important because it allows us not only to not have the same house in a row, but it allows the driveways to work. And that's one of the comments that I pointed out. And I'd love to share the next page with you, but it looks like we're having a little technical difficulty.
Okay.
So I lost those sheets. If you bear with me 1 second. All right, and the grading plan, there was just some general housekeeping that was in the Horsley Witten comment letter. We adjusted a couple minor grades and just general cleanliness on the plan with that. No major changes on this sheet other than the actual unit footprints. And again, those fit within the boxes that were depicted on the prior versions of this.
Okay. So these are all the plans, floor plans from that the preceding sheet throughout now are all consistent.
They are all consistent, and they're also consistent with the waivers that we have requested, in that putting these actual floor plans on there didn't result in us requiring any additional waivers.
Okay.
I'm going to skip over the detail sheets unless the peer reviewer wants us to touch on anything on those.
I do have two questions while you're going to look at these plans. Did you look into off-site runoff and confirm that it didn't change any of your design?
That related to, I believe your comment was an area on this side.
Let's see, behind collected off-site area southwest of the parcel may flow on and get collected by catch basins 7, 9, and 10. And it was a wooded area southwest. Yeah, so trying to confirm that
I
it
believe
wasn't
it's,
gonna run on, yeah, and just, I wasn't sure if you had looked at it or if, you know, it's a wooded area and maybe the ridge was like just 50 feet over the line and you knew that. I couldn't tell from what I was looking at where the limit of run on extended to.
yeah, so if you recall, there was a small hole in the topographic survey on some of the earlier versions of the plan. And at some point in this discussion, we went out and got additional survey data, and that's what's reflected on this. And I believe that's also what your comment was related to. Both Greg and I did take a look at that. We'll let Greg jump in and speak to that if he has a moment.
Sure, thanks, Seth. Greg Roy, Dillison Roy, the professional civil engineer, working with Seth on this one. Yeah, I understand your question. Thank you for that. We did take a look, Seth and I did take a look at that. There is a little bit of area, as you point out, wooded area to the southeast that will flow onto the property. Truthfully, I have not had a chance to analyze that area and model it in CAD, HydroCAD, but I do not believe that we're going to have an issue overcoming that. Seth, if you could kind of right where your cursor is, right there, right in that area there. I actually think we can mitigate it right in that area where it says proposed tree line. There'll be a little bit of, if there's any run on to the onto the site, I think we can mitigate it right in that location before it even flows and keep it from getting into the stormwater system. Well, we haven't had a chance to substantiate that, but I do understand the comment, and I don't anticipate any issue with resolving that.
Because does it continue to just go up, or is it just like a kind of a ridge and then it goes back down on the other side? Because is it like a hill?
Yeah. I mean, there's a, like I said, there's not a, it's not a huge area, but it's significant enough that we should take a quick look at it and model it. But when I looked at it, I don't believe that it's going to be a significant issue given the soils that we have. Relatively good curve numbers anyway, which limit, and it's wooded, so it limits the runoff potential from that area. And we have an area right behind Unit 3 that I think we can use to create a little depression storage if we need to mitigate that area. So I appreciate the comment, though. It's a good catch. And I just haven't had a chance to really study it, but again, I don't believe there's going to be any issue.
Okay, thanks.
Janet, would you expect then a response, a written response on that?
Well, I think once they understand the area, because it might be very small. I just wasn't sure how big of an area it actually is.
Mhm.
I didn't like pull out the USGS or anything and see if that just keeps going uphill. They just don't want to overflow their design system with additional area if, that they haven't kind of accounted for. That would be the concern. That they have more area going there, but they could accommodate it in that small area, in that small section, as he talked about, if necessary, just a matter of, is it necessary or not?
Yeah, we're more than happy.
We'd
more
want
than
a confirmation that it is or isn't necessary.
Yeah, we're more than happy to substantiate that in the future. However, I'm not sure what the result of this meeting is going to be, but we're happy to substantiate that and to the satisfaction of Horsley and Witten.
Great, thanks.
All right, I will move on, and certainly as I flip through these sheets, feel free to chime in and tell me to stop if there's anything that needs to be substantiated as we go through it.
Thanks, sir.
Like I said, I'm going to skip over the detail sheets. There were very few comments left related to anything on these, and these are more as a guidance in the construction level.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt just one more time. I just want to make sure that you understood our comment regarding the fabric underneath the Caltech system. It just appeared to be the fabric called out was one that didn't actually infiltrate. It was more like an isolator row fabric. So I think that it's something that will get corrected during with construction documents, and once Storm Tech kind of gets involved with the final design plan. I just want to make sure you understood what I was saying.
No, we completely understand. So I think, as we've discussed with the board prior, that these comprehensive permit plans start on a very preliminary basis. And as we go through this process, they essentially evolve into almost a construction plan set or a hybrid of the two. And it would be our intent to provide any clarifications like that on the actual construction set. And generally, Caltech provides a full written estimate to our client before he goes to build things and confirms the suitability with their current approvals and techniques as well. So that would be a condition that we could certainly agree to.
Great, thanks. And just for the zoning board's information, most of our other stormwater comments were just suggested recommendations for conditions. So I think from a stormwater point of view, we were comfortable.
Right.
The next couple sheets are general clarification items that were provided throughout this permitting process. Construction level stockpile areas, highlighting areas that need to be protected during construction. Those would certainly be evolved. One of the comments was that NPDES permit, a notice of intent for a construction general permit with the EPA would be required. These plans would be included in that and evolved upon as we enter that process. And that's a process that the EPA requires the applicant to complete 2 weeks prior to the start of construction. So we've laid the groundwork for that now and intend to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's as this project moves through those phases.
Okay.
Final plans are essentially notes and then some clarifications on the layout of infrastructure on the site. This plan before you shows the propane tanks, and we have read the fire department or fire chief's comment. He is of the opinion that anything over 2,000 gallons of propane stored on the site requires a permit. And we acknowledge that, and that permit will be sought if they end up storing more than 2,000 gallons of propane on this site. So in a nutshell, that summarizes our plan changes. I'd be happy to address any questions.
So on that last comment about this propane, so you show locations, you don't have an estimate of the volume of propane that would be in those?
So 8 units, and the fire chief did this math as well. So 8 units, and it would be assumed that a 500-gallon tank is provided for each unit. That would be 4,000 gallons, which would go over the threshold. And that's what prompted his comment. It's unclear if the units would be heated with propane or cooking only, or if they could actually share the tanks. There would probably be monthly fill-ups on a site like this. So in theory, they could share the tanks and be under the 2,000 gallons on the site.
I can take that for you, Seth, too. Jim Moran, applicant. The company I usually use is Devaney. Devaney assured me that, you know, for 6 of the units up around the cul-de-sac, that they would be sharing, 2 units would share 500-gallon buried tank, and units 1 and units 2 would receive 250-gallon buried tank. So it would be right at the 2,000. And then what they do, how Devaney does the gas, is that every unit gets a meter, and they would get billed for what they use in the meter, and they would fill it up. I've done some other projects with Devaney, and they said it's like having a natural gas company. They just fill it when they're in the area, then they bill on the meter. That's what they do with all their condo associations.
So you're saying it won't meet the threshold for a permit?
Correct. And Devaney also
Is this for home heating, or what are we doing with this gas? I'm not clear as to what.
Typically, the way I build the structures that I build is I use what they call a heat pump, which is good to about right now minus 25, not minus 25 degrees.
Okay.
And then there's a propane backup only. So a majority of the season, if any heat is required, you run the air conditioner in reverse for heat. So it's just the propane is used as backup heat, gas cooking, and probably a gas fireplace.
Okay, that's all I want to know, what the purpose was.
Okay.
So do you have to certify to the fire department then that at no time will it exceed 2,000 gallons? How do you?
What would happen? What happens in this process is, in order to even bury a tank, you need a fire department permit. So, you know, Devaney pulls all the permits with the fire department. So they work, the company, the propane company actually works with the fire department to set the tanks, to make sure the proper distances is set, say off the property line or off the structure, and how many gallons you're burying, and all that is all on the permits that Devaney will pull to install their tanks.
Okay.
Hey, Seth, can you go back to page 3, please?
Happy to.
I just wanted that page because I think it's easiest to see the unit numbers.
It's a unit 1 is cut off on this. I can move the screen around as this discussion requires. Was there anything specific you wanted the cursor over?
Well, the question is actually for the applicant. Jim, do you have your affordable units designated now?
Yes, I was working with the architect on them, and it's going to be, it'll be unit 5 and then unit 2. I know that we talked in the past that they want it up around the cul-de-sac.
Yep, and it looks like that's 2 of each unit type, which is satisfies me.
Okay.
So I don't know if anybody else had any comment on that.
No, that is considerably what we wanted. You know, variety of type and you know, up in that area. So that's a good point.
The other interesting thing is, I know the architect had submitted some floor plans late. I apologize for that. It just seems like everybody's so busy. But after sizing these units, they're both the same square footage. They round out about 2,150. So no matter what units we pick for the affordables, they'll be the same square footage.
But you have picked 5.
Yes, 5 and 2 is I'd like to disclose as being the affordable units. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. So Seth, did you have additional, had you got through all the plans or?
I did. So you have seen these plans before. They've just been added with additional details since last time. There's really no major layout changes incorporated in them. So I'd be happy to step aside unless there's any questions that you have specific to our plan set.
I have one further question.
Okay.
Is that okay? And
Okay.
I'm sorry, I should have introduced my name for the record, Janet Bernardo, professional engineer with the Horsley Witten Group, just for the record. Wondering about the site distance and at the driveway entrance and if that was investigated any further. With the site triangle and the speed of the posted speed and what that might mean.
Yeah, so the posted speed is absent. We've gone up and down the street looking for it. It's hard to believe that it defaults to the town's higher speed limit on this portion of the roadway, as it is fairly narrow and winding. So the applicant had spoken briefly with the police chief, I believe. His intent would be to work with the select board to get and the police chief, should he recommend, to have the road posted at a lower speed limit so that we could have improved safety in that area.
And can you confirm the height of the wall?
Oh, that was one of your comments. So the walls at the open of the driveway, they're actually called out on this plan. They're flanking either side. Those are strictly ornamental, and we'd have no problem if the comprehensive permit required them to be 18 inches taller or less, so that they would be well below the sight line height.
And then our other outstanding comment had to do with the wetlands and a response about the various wetland comments that we previously issued. Has Norris Engineering been able to provide any response to those?
I'll speak on that. I sent something over to Valerie. I just forwarded Maureen from Norris's latest email that she's just running really late and she hopes to have something early next week. Again, it just seems like trying to get some companies to do some work for me. Everybody's super busy. It's embarrassing. I don't know what to say, but I know we've been working on this project for a very long time and we're trying to get things done. So Maureen promised a full letter. I think it was either Tuesday or Wednesday next week. I did forward to Valerie her email.
What happens is, that's a major component of it. We don't know if there'll be any waivers necessary or not, but it also has to get reviewed and by a peer review. So I know we've talked about trying to wrap this hearing up by the June 5th date, I think, but now we're into, it'll be the mid to later May before we're getting final documents and things. So, it just bumps us up again, waiting for documentation. So but we'll deal with that at the end of the hearing and see what.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just point out, the waivers related to the local wetland bylaw have actually been spelled out already. Those would not be changing based on Norris's letter. We've defined what those distances are, so you have those, but I do understand that you would like the wetland consultant's input on these as well.
Okay.
I can confirm that everybody's really busy these days, so
Yeah, right.
I understand that issue, and we are as well. So that's
Right. But for us, trying to wrap up and close, we need all our final documentation. We need, be able to say issues that may have been raised have been, addressed or are open, so that, if there's any conditions, so it'd be nice to just get this all buttoned up, so. Because I believe with that, we also we have two boards that We have pending comments probably from planning board and design review board because we haven't got to the sort of final, well, maybe we're getting close now, but based on this plan set, but I don't know if they've been able to review and opine on the most recent so that we can sort of tick that off so that in case they have any issues or to be raised, we can incorporate that during the hearing process.
Are we also still waiting on architectural plans? I don't know if I'm just missing them.
I'll speak on that. The floor plans was submitted late today. And there were some preliminary renderings there, which shows the front of each dwelling, proposed dwelling, I should say. So, and the floor plans were stamped by the architect.
We haven't seen those yet, Valerie, have we?
Right. So I was unable to forward anything that came after 4 p.m.
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm. Right.
Can anybody bring those up and share them, or is that not possible?
Jim, are those the same that you sent me?
I haven't sent them to you and I don't know how to share my screen. I apologize, but if somebody wants to walk me through, I'll be willing to share my screen because I do have them. So I just hit share screen, I'm assuming.
Sure.
It's a little green button at the bottom. As
I see
Well,
that.
you-
Thank you.
Jim, while you do that, I'm just gonna step aside for like 1 minute. I just have to get onto the
Yeah.
porch and scare away a fox. It's
Okay. Hopefully it doesn't hurt me.
trying to chase one of my cats. So I'll be right back.
Then just go into files, I guess, Dropbox. Sign in. Ugh.
So, yeah, usually maybe Seth can talk you through it because it's a little
Jim,
green at the bottom.
Jim,
And then you,
Jim, can you just forward them to either email
Oh,
them to
yes,
Seth
that's
Seth or I, and
really
then
easy. I appreciate that. So let me do that. I'll forward them to Seth.
it's magic, you know, the email, it's amazing, but it's
Yeah.
still remember the date, still remember the days when it would have taken a week to get that document to us, but
No, I'll forward it to Seth. I appreciate that.
Thanks, guys. I'm back.
the other question I had was, and maybe Valerie, you can answer this. Has the Board of Health provided any opinion?
They have not weighed in yet, and that's another thing that I would like to get their opinion prior to the board reviewing that waiver list. So I will nudge them again. It's been I think about 2 weeks since I've last asked, so I'll get that to them again.
So we're not even close to being ready to close the hearing, sounds like at this point. While we're waiting.
Well, it sounds like we're getting close, you know, but for the final comments based on all the new submissions that have happened up through today, but I'm not certain that we'll be able to
So Seth,
squeeze it all in by the June 5th, I think targeted new extension date that was granted, you know, so to the extent we need to add a few more weeks or something and see if that can work out to get that information. So that also allows Valerie time to probably incorporate all these items into a draft decision that we can do the draft waiver review confidently all at the same time so that we can then vote to close the hearing.
Okay, so hopefully my screen is up. I just received the email Jim sent over.
Yep, it's up.
He's provided 2 front elevations. And I can zoom on them individually. And then I spoke to me see if I can spin this so we're not all laying sideways looking at them. So we sent over some stamped floor plans as well, and that I spoke to that there was unit A and B, unit C and D, essentially mirrors of the unit A and unit C.
Mhm.
And that's what's reflected on the civil plans that were sent over to you as well.
Okay. So on those, the page 1 renderings. So what are the materials? Are they?
The materials will be a barn board material, bead and barn board. It'll look like they'll be white. There'll be asphalt shingles on the roof, architectural asphalt shingles on the roof, lifetime warranty. But the siding will be, white board and barn board, I guess. And then the doors will be fiberglass to make it look like they're wood. Trying to think what else. I think that's it.
Oh, is it all vertical like that? I mean,
Yes, it's a vertical. Yeah,
a very vertical design like that.
yeah, yeah. It's to make it look like a contemporary farmhouse.
Okay.
They all are identical colors?
They'll be all white. Yes.
And
What's the
doors?
material of that chimney coming out the top? Can you zoom in on that a little?
Yeah.
And what is that for? Is that for the fireplace?
Yes, it's for a gas fireplace. It's just aesthetics. It would
Yeah.
be what we call a stick-on real stone.
Mhm.
It's a cut stone where we take a field stone and we cut it, then we adhere it with cement, and then we grout the middle.
So you won't need a chimney system, right? You'll have like these,
Well, it's a double line stainless flue. It's like a 6-inch pipe, which is double line. It has to meet the fire code. That just sits in a plywood box per se, and then we put a stone face when it comes through the roof on top of the roof.
okay.
So just a quick question here for the board. The applicant last went in front of the design review board in October, and I'm wondering if you would also like the applicant to go back to the DRB or potentially have a joint meeting with the design review board at one of the ZBA's public hearings to kind of finalize their review of the plans and move forward on that end.
Do
Yeah,
we
I
have the
mean,
comments from them from the original meeting? Are those on the Mallard Lane conglomeration of documents, do you know?
I can check on that. Yeah.
I literally don't remember what they said originally, so.
But whatever they had at the time, it was an 11 unit. It didn't have this type of,
Yeah, things have changed quite a
things
bit.
have changed dramatically. And so it would be nice at a minimum, now that we've received these, just recently, get them to them, and then right at the next here, they could participate, rather than, I don't know if it makes sense to have Jim try to schedule, the applicant schedule a new hearing with them, and then we have to get the comment. If we can maybe do it all together, it may benefit a more expeditious process. But certainly that puts work on you to get them the information and request that they review it and be available to participate in a follow-up hearing, similar with the planning board probably, so that everyone's on board with the most recent. To the extent they want to participate in the hearing, at least get a letter from them.
Yes, that's another good point. So if the ZBA does want planning board review, again, the planning board last reviewed these plans in October. Of course, there've been a lot of site plan changes. So if there is further or any input desired from that board, it would be good to schedule a meeting with the planning board. But again, the applicant can meet with those other boards outside of a public hearing. So those don't need to be scheduled as public hearings, as those are not part of this review. It would simply be for recommendation or comment, but nothing, no directives from those boards. But I'm also happy if this board wants to just continue the public hearing to another date. I can send the design review board and the planning board that note to attend if possible.
And at a minimum, they would at least be able to present their comments in the email or a letter. How expeditiously do you think, Jim, if you went the route of meeting with them to present these, the most current plans, or is it you may not have the time? Is it, but just go with our process to send them everything and have them get back to us? I mean, you may, if you can get in front of them, may be able to expedite the issue, but I don't,
Yeah, I try to get in front of them. I don't know what their schedule is like. I know the architect is got to put, a side elevation on this and a rear elevation on this. He's promising me this week, like everybody else, but I think, with that in mind, say I do get a letter from Norris early in the week, next week, and then if I can get, I'm just trying to think it through is, what does the ZBA find it most important is the comments from the design review board or planning board, and maybe I could prioritize who they want me to go see and what they want me to ask, or.
That's what I was,
right. Our plan, I mean, whenever we have a 40B, we try to get from the boards, because we sit in their seats in effect with the 40B process. So, to the extent we have comments that were from October where it doesn't even match what we're talking about now, it would seem silly to have that incorporated into the record of the hearing to say, okay, yeah, these are the comments we received on something that's not even applicable anymore. So I would like to get updated comments, even if they're they say, well, given that it changed in scope down to only 8, we don't really have any issue, that's fine too. But I think we have to give them the opportunity so that we have the most current standing by those boards that we're incorporating into the record.
Right. I just,
Joe, do you have any input on that or any comment on that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, it's really the board needs the input of design review board. The board has been consistent over the years with comprehensive permits on getting input from the design review board. It's been actually quite important input and has changed the final look of and presentation of the units themselves. It's not outside of the normal process for any development in town, so it's not treating this project any different than prior projects. And to date, there has not been what we have now, which is an architect and architectural plans and elevations. I would imagine that the design review board would want to see colors and also understand materials. They're very conscious of those things and direct input. So I would go to them with as much as possible with regards to what the intent is. And I don't think you necessarily have to mire your process in trying to schedule a joint meeting. I think the normal process would be to get the information to the design review board. They may ask more information, and you'd hate to schedule a meeting and just have it come to the meeting and have them report that they needed more information. So I'd get the package out, get the design review board looking at this, doing what they do in the normal course, and then get the commentary back. Hopefully there's back and forth between the applicant, the architect, the design review board, so that what comes back for commentary to the board is made some suggestions, they incorporated the suggestions, and we're happy
Right, go from there, right?
and go
I
from
want to
there.
clarify something, Gerard. The elevations that were shown, are those two options for the same footprint? Or were those designed to show the two different footprints?
I'll speak on that. Those are designed to show the two different footprints. So the one in the top, which has the two double windows, that's the unit that is, let's just measure it so I have it correct. That's the unit that's 60 wide, and then 50 deep. So an example of that one would be unit 5, the top one.
Okay.
Type B. If you can see the two windows right above type B, you can see that's what signifies that. And then the bottom one would be the drawing with just one double window off to the left of the front door. And the example of that would be like a type D, which is the narrow home, which is 40 feet wide or 40 feet deep, 65 wide.
So why the staggered
Okay.
roof line on one and the sort of consistent roof line on the other?
Excuse me?
Why the staggered roof line on this one versus like the other one, it's very straight line?
Yeah, I think
Is that
the
just for-
architect's working on this. I told him we did have a meeting. So I think he's trying to show some character. You know, I told him that, you know, that this is a process and that
Mhm.
we just can't put anything out there. So I think he's working on it.
Okay.
Is the best I can tell. Like for me personally, that bottom unit that's too much roof. But
Mhm.
you know, I'm going to work with him on that. I'm going to tell him that.
Okay.
So you know, I'll be working with him this week, and hopefully we can get something. You know, I'll look up when the design review board is, and get it to Valerie, and or also to do a double delivery if I have to. One set of plans to the design review.
Mhm.
Well, I like the response of that my concern was that you were presenting two different options for the same footprint, and then we get into the issues of, well, who's choosing the design? Is it the builder or is it the buyer? And is there a difference in cost such that the affordable unit owner ends up getting the less maybe the less desirable or weaker looking one? But basically your answer was great, because basically you're saying there's two options. So whether it's an affordable unit or not, they're going to get the same unit as the market rate.
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I ask a question? It's Greg.
Oh, sure. Sorry. Go ahead.
So your board is going to ask, from what I'm hearing, is going to ask at least the planning board, the design review committee, and perhaps Conservation Commission and Board of Health for official comments. Is that what I'm hearing? Or have you already done that?
We have asked them,
have.
but as I said, we have, when we asked them, it was based on what was available, and a lot of them were the 11 unit plans and things like that. So now we're getting all this new information. So
Okay, well, that's what I meant. So you haven't done it since we switched the plan? Since we,
well, I'd have to defer to Valerie exactly what went out, but even since you switched the plan, we've now have architectural drawings. We've had, we had a whole host of things. Just
I'm not trying to, you hear me? I'm not trying to point a finger into something. I'm just
No,
trying to
that's
get
fine.
an understanding just to try to, by way of moving it forward. I just wanted to, if those are the four boards, and again, design review, planning board, conservation, and Board of Health, we can go to some or all of those boards, but if your board doesn't formally ask them to make additional comments, it might not do us much good. So I was going to suggest maybe a multi-pronged approach where your board formally ask them to revisit their comments based on the new plan. And we can try to get to as many of those meetings as if we know when they're on the agenda, for example, we can certainly, I think Jim would be amenable to trying to, at their courtesy, for their courtesy to attend and be available in the audience to answer questions.
Right.
But I think that correct me if I'm wrong, Joe, but I think it's appropriate if the zoning board make a formal request for each of those to update them, because we can go in there and say, hey, the zoning board really wants you to comment, but if it doesn't come from the horse's mouth, so to speak, it may not do as much good. So
I think I agree with Greg, but I also think there's another layer here in that the applicant can certainly help this cause by putting together specific packages for each. Now on the design review board, it's what I just discussed with regards to architectural. With regards to the Board of Health, it would be what changed from the plan and where you think you are on wells and septic.
Mhm.
And the specific, refresh their memory specifically of what waivers you're requesting from that board's regulations on wells and septic. And then the board can reinforce that and asking for commentary and help with deliberating on those requested waivers. I don't think you're ready for going to conservation until Maureen at Norse has provided the responses to Amy Ball's commentary. So that needs to be there to complete the package, to give them that information to be able to again help the board deliberate on the waivers there. And that's their role, is to help the board with matters that they're used to dealing with in their reviews. Planning board's always a wild card. They're taken out of this role, and that their normal course of commentary is not there, and they're always going to comment that the plans are not sufficiently detailed for their review because they're not as detailed as they're normally see within their processes. I always say to zoning boards, don't hold your breath on the planning board comments, but it certainly can try. I don't think you need to do the same supplementing of their packages or any explanation. I would just ask. And as a matter of course, the plans have changed, they've reduced from 11 to 8, and to the degree you have commentaries or commentary or could help. And I would emphasize that you're approaching the end of the process, and the two main areas of input that the board's looking for is comment on the waivers and any conditions that you see fit from your normal processes, and looking at projects when they are under your control, what you might condition, how you might formulate conditions. So.
yeah, that's good. Thanks, Joe. I appreciate that. That gives us, I don't know,
A roadmap.
we could talk, Seth and I could talk with Jim about that, but
Okay,
I
so when
understand
you
what you're suggesting.
when you do comprise those plan sets or those packages, certainly, get that information to Valerie. We can double prong, as you say. Valerie can certainly solicit those boards and those, commission, and you can also then follow. We will support that. Yes, we want them to comment on it and to,
So that's what I'm trying to get at. That's a great, so should we, is it this board's request that we directly reach out to those boards? And I guess per Joe, Conservation Commission, when it's time, Conservation Commission, Board of Health, and DRB, or should we wait to get, to have your board through Valerie approach them and then submit them materials?
So Valerie, we've already asked them to be involved in the process, correct?
That's correct, a few times. So, this,
Okay.
this question for comments wouldn't be totally out of the blue for them. It's,
Right.
you know, the last time I reached out was about 2 weeks ago.
Right. So
Okay.
I don't,
All right.
I don't think we
That-
have to
that's
do
what
a
I'm-
separate
Yeah, that-
review.
That's what I'm getting at. That's what I needed to hear.
Yeah.
That it's not coming out of left field and they're expecting it. So I think that gives us what we need to know.
Okay. Perfect. But when you do reach out to them, could you just be sure to copy Valerie
Absolutely.
so that we know a timeline of like, okay, then if we have to push them or whatever, we can do whatever encouragement. To
Absolutely.
assist you in that effort as well.
Absolutely. It looks to me like the Board of Health is tomorrow, so that's going to be out.
Mhm,
I think that the Conservation Commission is probably next week.
mhm.
I think that the Planning Board is probably Wednesday night and then the 25th. Is that right, Valerie?
Yes, that's right.
So it looks like maybe the 25th for Planning Board would be the first available. Conservation, I'm guessing, is the 17th, and Board of Health is probably going to be maybe the 24th, although I don't see that scheduled on your calendar. And then I'm not sure on Design Review Board. I don't know if is that a board that meets kind of as required?
Exactly. Yes, they meet as
Okay.
needed. So,
Right.
so once you do provide a packet or materials that you specifically want the DRB to review, I can contact those members and set up a meeting time.
Okay. Yep. Thanks. Appreciate that.
So anything from the applicant or engineering team? We sort of had a hybrid model meeting so far where people are jumping in, whether it be the Witten or the board, but I want to be sure that if you're done, then also have confirmation from Witten. I think they may have spoke to their letter as well as what's open, but I want to be sure that they have the opportunity to confirm that as well.
Well, Mr. Chairman, from our side, I have nothing additional to add. We do appreciate all the input. I think we've crossed a major hurdle in that most, if not all, the technical items have either been resolved or can be resolved in short order. And we are on to discussing a lot of the aesthetics and opinion items of this process, which we will work with Jim to get before the boards that were mentioned. So I will go on mute for a bit, and if there's any specifics for our side, just let me know.
Thank you, Seth. So Janet, or I don't know if Amy's there, but you want to just chime in to confirm that we've covered everything in your most recent letter, and if there's anything that we haven't, just to make sure you bring that up.
Yeah, I think for the most part, we have. The only thing that I believe that I'm seeing that's not just a recommendation is the landscape plan. We are basically deferring to you acceptance of the landscape plan. So I just want to make sure that the zoning board is kind of aware of that, whether there are specific things you want to look at, the limit of trees that are being removed or the types of trees that are going in. You know, it's just out there as something that we have deferred to your board. I'm not sure if you defer to anybody else for that or looked for opinions from the design review board or the planning board, but that's the one thing that we haven't talked about tonight that was listed in our letter.
I'll have to go back and look at that that plan to see, you know, what might or might not. Valerie, have you looked at that landscape plan recently? And any issues with that?
I have not looked at the at what was sent over recently. I've not had a chance to.
All right, so we'll look at that and make sure that that's spoken about, or at least at the next hearing, be sure that we say, yep, we're good with whatever's proposed in that, or if there's anything required that we need differently. Okay.
I believe everything else in our letter has been discussed, though.
Okay, perfect. And Joe, you had some comments, but I think we may have to address some of them tonight. Do you want to confirm that your comments have been addressed or at least raised?
Yes, I'm not certain that we've closed the door on the site distance issue. I think there's, with regards to what site distance is available, there was a question raised by the neighbor that the site distance they were relying on, looking to the left, was going through their property. So there was a question as to what is the site distance if you didn't look through their property, because there's no easement in place that would prevent that landowner from planting trees, bushes, parking a car, whatever, in that. So I think there hasn't been an answer to that question. What is the available site distance? And then what is the required site distance is a matter of speed. And there was a suggestion that they do a speed study to understand not what the posted speed limit is or what the Board of Selectmen or Police Department might reduce the speed to, but what are people doing on that road? That's normally what site distances are based on, is what's happening out there today. If people are going too fast, then it can become a police issue, a traffic calming issue, signage, whatever it be. But I think we have to start by understanding what is truly available for site distances at that entryway.
Okay. So Jim, what do you think about that? Or Greg, his hand up. Greg has his hand up, so if he wants to handle it.
I didn't want to speak out of turn, so go
Okay.
ahead. I do have a comment on that issue, but I'll wait till you guys.
Right. I mean, I'm a Bolton resident. I travel that road quite a bit, and I called the police chief the other day. And he had some comments for me that I won't repeat right now. But for me, in my family, who I travel over the Highland Commons, I live on Oak Trail. I use that road quite a bit, and it's unsafe. It's unsafe, and it's not posted. When I look at the Mass General laws, I know Joe disagrees with me here, but I'm talking from a resident and not as a developer. So when you read Mass General laws, and this is what I read to the chief the other day on the phone, I said, listen, chief, you have quite a bit of homes less than 200 feet apart. You have 1,320 feet. It's thickly settled. And he said to me, I don't think there's that many homes there. I said, chief, you can go on Mass Oliver, which is now Mass Mapper, and you can look. You can see the homes. You can see how thickly settled it is. So for me, regardless of my subdivision, it's a safety issue. And I promised him that I would submit a plan to him that he's going to review with the DPW director. And he said to me, you know, you're barking up the wrong tree because you have to go to the selectmen. And I'm willing to do all that because I think there's some other areas in town that need addressing. And I, as a resident, want to address them. So I'm going to use my own time and my own money to address some issues. And this will be one of them. And what we're going to try to do is get it defined as thickly settled. We got to get a comment from Mass Highway. And I'm going to work on those. And there's several others in town that I want to work on. And he said to me that they've been working on Main Street and that Mass Highway is giving them a hard time. So I'm going to help them work on Main Street too, because I know that stuff. And, you know, when you read the Mass General laws, it says thickly settled. It's well defined. And it's a pretty easy calculation. Now, I have engineers that work for me that used to work at Mass Highway that are willing to stamp the plans. So that's kind of where I'm going with it. You know, I know Joe's coming at it from a different point when you try to do, and this is the most confusing part for me, Joe, when you told me that, you know, it depends on what's happening out there. Well, if it's unsafe, we're going to promote it. I mean, that from an engineering standpoint, for me, in a safety and being a resident of this town, for me, that's ridiculous. I understand what you're saying, and I don't doubt what you're saying, and you've done it probably 1,000 times. But for me as a resident, for somebody to tell me it's what they do out there is that's what we're going to promote, I don't like that. And I'll spend my own money to fight it because it's not safe on that road. And one of the things that's missing, and this is classic government regulation, there's no width specified. And that becomes important. It kind of reminds me of conservation when they say you got to be 100 feet from the wetland, and they don't take they don't take account of a slope, which is ridiculous. Because the slope, if I'm a 2-to-1 slope and I'm 100 feet away, we're gonna have a lot more rush into the wetlands than if I'm 0% slope, 50 feet away. So I'm sorry, I got a little upset about this, but it's been really bothering me, Joe. I know you know what you're doing. You're very well qualified, but for me as a resident of this town, if you're guiding somebody to saying it is what they do out there and not have another suggestion, I'm not happy with that as a resident. So that's where I'm going to go with the speed limit. And, you know, if it's strictly settled to 30, we do have the sight distance. It's in the charts supplied by Dillis and Roy. But guys, I've had enough of this project. I mean, you kicked it around. I've been working on this thing for 4.5 years.
We appreciate you've been
You know,
you've been kicking it around. We haven't been
reduced
kicking
it.
it around.
I have
Pretty
reduced
short.
the projects, guys. I've done everything. Now I'm at a point where I'm going to start to find deficiencies in how the government operates, because I'm getting upset. I mean, this is supposed to be a comprehensive, expedited process.
Right. Assuming we had where we are today with what you had today, then this would have been an expedited process. We show good faith by having meetings every month and, you know, trying to move this along. We're 7 months into whatever the required months we're at, and we're just getting new information. So, you know, I know you're frustrated. Let's not us all get frustrated by the fact that, you know, we want to get over the line, but we have to, you know, we have a good plan now to get there, but, you know, we want to be sure to button up all the loose ends.
But like the Board of Health, I talked to Bill Brookings. He didn't comment. He didn't comment 2 weeks ago. He's not going to comment until he has to approve something. And that has nothing to do with this. And Joe can even tell you that. I mean, you're sending me down the road again. I got to go talk to Bill. I talk to him almost every day. He knows about the project. Valerie said she's reached out to him many times, but you're saying go again.
Or have him just say that he has no comments until.
What if he doesn't want to?
Okay, that's fine too.
He doesn't want to.
That's fine too. You know, as long as we know that we've done our due diligence.
This is what I'm getting at. This is the whole point of my discussion right now with everybody here, is that I've done everything I've been asked as the best as I can.
Right. Yeah. And we're still we were still asking for information that we just got last night or today. So I mean, come on, Jim. Let's just all be civil on this and just realize that we're getting close, and you know we have to, you know, for our record, make sure we close the loop on open items. So.
But if people don't realize when they can make a decision with enough information, yeah, it's not going to be perfect. It's never going to be perfect, Gerard. Okay, never. You're never going to get all the information. You're never going to get all the information that you want. Okay, and that's it. And you gotta. The reason why you chose to be on these boards and commissions is you got to make some tough decisions. I get it, but you're not going to get everything always the way you want it. You know, and be successful.
Neither will you with that attitude. So let's.
I don't have an attitude, Brad. I'm being honest. I think it's important to be honest.
I'll agree.
I'm being honest. I don't have an attitude, Gerard.
Well,
Mr. Chairman.
It's coming across with a little bit of attitude. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I might just respond.
Mhm.
This board is tasked in reviewing this project and hopefully granting a comprehensive permit. Your job is to look at issues of safety. To do that, you need the basic information. With regards to the site distances, there are prescribed methodologies that DOT or AASHTO with regards to how those are measured. And a direct abutter brought up a very good point with regards to what was presented in one of the directions. That needs to be responded to. You as a board have a responsibility to review that and to request that information. With regards to what that information means, it has to be looked at in accordance with the standard operation of a traffic engineer, which is to look at the actual speeds that are happening on the road. That then brings you to how the project stands with regards to the recommended site distances. There's two ways. If there's insufficient site distance, there's two ways to approach that. There's making physical changes, whether it's vegetative removal or regrading, project related, applicant required, to increase the site distance. The second is to look at traffic calming measures to address the fact that people are going too fast. And there are various methods that traffic engineers can put into place that can help that, whether it be signage, whether it be speed humps, whatever it be. There are things that the applicant can contribute to through this process towards helping the insufficiency that could be identified once the applicant provides that first baseline information. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not saying anything about complacency with the existing situation in the roadways or whatever. I'm talking about the responsibility of this board to review the technical aspects and compliance with the recommended site distances that are applied to every single project that has a driveway entering out into a roadway system that's more than a single family house.
Joe, there was a request that was made to the police department for comment, and there were no issues or concerns cited. Is it your opinion that we should be asking about specific issues when we ask the police department for comment on an application such as this?
You should not step aside of standard design and analysis practices because the police chief chose to comment that there's no issues. You're assuming that the police chief has the capability and the qualifications and the background to look at items such as safe site distance. He is the chief safety officer of the community, but here we have an identified issue. First, it's a question. What is the site distance? We don't know what the site distance is. We can't even say whether it's adequate or not, or how close to adequate it is. But if it's not adequate, when measured in accordance with the prescribed methods to measure site distance, then the board can react through either imposition of conditions or ask the applicant to look at things, or engage the police chief at that point to give him specifics, to engage him on what the issue is. A similar, recent project that I was the consultant on in Shirley, there was a problem with speeding. And because of the speeding on the street, and it was a posted speed limit, they didn't meet the site criteria. So they worked with the police department and the public works department to contribute to one of those flashing speed limit signs that shows the driver's speed. And the police chief said, well, I don't want it to be permanent because people get used to it being there and then they just ignore it. So I want you to contribute whatever it was, the $3,000, to get a portable one. And then I can move it around as I see fit. That's just an example. Now, some would argue that that's an existing problem that the town has a responsibility to mitigate. And to that degree, Jim is correct. They do. But if the discussion at this, in this hearing for this project revolves around an insufficient site distance per the industry standards, then it kind of ups Jim's need to negotiate on solutions that involve this board, so that this board sees through your responsibility to approve a safe project, in accordance with the industry standard.
I have a quick question. How detailed and onerous a process is it to establish the site distances on this particular site? I mean, is this a huge deal, or is it something that can be done fairly quickly?
It's very simple. You measure back 17 feet from the edge of travel way. You look north, you look one direction, you look the other, and you're looking from an eye height of about 3.5 feet, which equates to your eye height in a car. And you're looking for an object that's 3.5 feet, which equates to the hood of a car coming around the corner or over a hill.
So it's something Roy and Dillis could do in a day?
Well,
Absolutely.
it's on the plan. We do have them calculated on the plan.
On
We
the
just don't-
plan,
we
Greg,
just-
but looking in the direction to the left, it goes right
Right.
through the neighbor's property.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say. So we can certainly, that's a very easy calculation if we don't have the benefit of looking over the abutting property, that's not a difficult calculation for us. But I wanted to make sure the board knows we did calculate the site distances. We
Well,
measured them.
so the bottom line is, if the neighbor puts a bunch of trees in there, what is the distance gonna be? I guess that's what I'm asking.
Right, and we could get you that very.
I mean, let's do a worst case on this thing and be
Mm-hmm.
done with it.
Yep.
The outstanding issue is because it's not posted, and I think it was Valerie that talked to the chief of police, excuse me, and he commented if it's not posted, it's 40. And that's really my gripe with the whole situation. It isn't that we didn't have that, because if it does get dropped to 30, Dillis and Roy did do a nice chart. We do have the site distance.
Well,
Even if they plant it at 30 miles an hour.
yeah, I'm not sure about that, Jim. So I'd have to get that to you.
Okay, you submitted it on plans and I looked at it, so, but we will relook at that.
Yeah, I mean, it shouldn't be a big deal. Why don't we get this done and be done with it and move on? I mean, just deal with it.
No problem on my end.
Yeah, that calculation is not difficult for us to provide the board, so we can get that very quickly.
Okay,
Then if it needs to be remediated, we can go to the police chief and say, fix it, you know? That's-
We like Joe said it nicely. We will, I, as the applicant, will work with everybody I need to work with to rectify that situation.
Right.
okay.
It does seem like a good opportunity to do some, if that's the way we have to end up going, to do some signage or some things like that on the, because this, everybody knows the road. I mean, it's, as Jim said, it's narrow. There's curves in it, looking both directions, but particularly the issue is looking in the, I'm going to say southerly, planned south anyway, southerly direction, taking a left out of the site, out of the new road, is the challenging direction. So it does seem like there's an opportunity maybe to put some, to do some posting, and like Jim said, Jim will work with the town, but we can get that calculation.
Okay. All right. So then, Joe, are all your other comments then addressed, at least tonight?
Yes, Mr.
The submitted architect plans and whatnot, they're sufficient?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, perfect. All right. So, so Jim, what's your timeline for whatever documentation you think you're going to then resubmit to the board or submit to the board? Like, you've got comments coming from Norse, you have architectural drawings or revisions.
Yeah,
so what is that timeline so that we can sort of look at what
The things I could speak on is I should have final renderings, I guess, from the architect this week, and Norse's next week, early next week. So I would say by the end of next week, I would submit to Valerie those documents. So I think at the same time, like Greg was nice enough to start to say some of the boards are meeting, later this month. So hopefully, my stuff will be ready so I could maybe walk in and under comment period or something on each board or commission, or with the design review board, like Valerie was saying, I submit documents, then they meet. So that one would help me. So I would say, I'm probably looking at, honestly, another 1 month extension to try to wrap this up, I guess.
Okay. I think that would probably work for the timeline, because then we certainly there's emphasis on your behalf, on our behalf, that let's get it the final.
I know that.
And we're going to do that, and say we're not trying to prolong your endeavor that you may have kicked off 4 years ago, but we have to look at what has been with our time frame from when you kicked off in 2021 with us, and we're trying to get there, and there's been revisions, and a lot of it's part of the process, which has been great that you've been able to work with us through the process. But if we can just bring it over this hump, we'll be able to have our documentation, we'll be able to review waivers, and we'll be able to have a draft decision, and then we'd have a vote. So I think we're close. And I apologize if there was any shortness on my behalf.
No, there was not. And I apologize, get upset. I'm just frustrated. I mean, I call people every day, 5 times a day for documents and stuff, and they don't come. And then Valerie gets a little upset at me because she gets them last minute. I'm like, I feel like I work at a law firm, and, I just try to put out fires, but I can't get anything on time. I mean,
well, we appreciate your efforts. We do have a process as well. And so, and Valerie, such a great resource to the town. She wears multiple hats. She's like yesterday's Kentucky Derby or whatever. She's got hats everywhere, and she's got to satisfy boards and commissions and everyone. So
I actually had a general question for Joe. Joe, is there any towns that have representatives on the ZBA? Could they add members, like one from planning board, one from conservation? Have you run into that at all with your experience?
No, not official representatives that are sitting voting members. It's more of a common practice in New Hampshire, where the select board has a representative on each of the boards.
Because I definitely
not in Massachusetts.
I definitely think it would help Massachusetts if we did something like that, even if there were not voting members that would sit in at each meeting. I mean, that's how when I worked in government, the selectmen had different subcommittees, and that's how we did a lot. And any plan that came to me as a permitting director, we would have a joint meeting on it. But I was just wondering, in your experiences, if you've ever seen that. Thank you for answering the question.
So with that, so we'll need a letter then. So is July 5th the proposed target date, Jim, then?
Yes.
1 month, okay.
Yep.
So so with that, and it looks like we'll have information probably late May as things will percolate from you and maybe the other boards. So does the board have maybe middle of June sometime availability? Can you look at a calendar, Valerie?
Yeah, I will note that it looks like we do have a resident with their hand up as well.
Okay, that's a good point. And Andy did mention that in the chat, and forgot to look at that. So why don't we take that question first? You can look at the calendar, and we'll have Brittany Bethune chime in.
Hi, it's
Sorry
Brittany
about that
Bethune.
delayed recognition.
Oh, no worries. It's Brittany Bethune of 342 South Bolton Road. And I just had some general questions just for my knowledge. So I was looking at, I think it's the soil test 1 for holes 5 and 6, and they both said they're out more than 100 feet outside of the drinking water well, but the 5 and 6 are not when you look at the C 1.1. Didn't know if that was an issue or not, but we did notice that it said it was more than 100 feet, but it's within 100 feet, but over 50 feet from our well. So that was just I didn't know if there was concern at all with that. And then my second question, in general, I might have missed this earlier because I did come in late, but I wasn't sure what a drainage way was. And it seems like every soil test site was outside of 100 foot of a drainage way, but I just didn't know what that meant and how that was possible with this density for this plan. My other two quick points are, we still haven't, I think it might be hard because I think there's a bend in our property line that might be going through a tree. And those trees still haven't been marked on the site plan as existing trees. And we just, whether or not like they might be right on the cusp or something, we just want to make sure that those trees are not going to get disturbed because we have very few trees on our property and they're right on the line. There's like 3 or 4 pines. So we just want to make sure that theirs are not going to get disturbed when that septic system goes in or that leaching field goes in. And then my last point is there's a proposed, I forget what you call it, storage spot right next to our house. And we're just wondering if there's any kind of rules and regulations about how that is left at the end of each day, because since it's right next to our backyard, if there's like a bunch of dust or a big dirt pile or something, would that be able to blow into our yard at any given time? Or if there's any rules or regulations about how that is maintained when there's no active work being done on the site, like in the evenings on the weekend. And those are my 4 questions.
Okay. So does anyone either from Dillis or the applicant have any preliminary responses to those questions?
I'll let Greg handle the distance on the test holes. I'll take the trees. So I'll just go first because I'm speaking. Yep. So there's no intent to take down any trees along the property line, the large pines.
Wonderful.
Okay. And what I'll do is I'll commit at this time, if that's a stockpile area near your home, that I'll be amenable to tarping that when it's not being operated on to keep the dust and control down.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And then I'll let Dillis and Roy take the next one.
Yeah, can you just, sorry about this. I heard the tail end of what you asked. So your concern is with which test holes?
Yeah, 5 and 6. I just didn't know
5 and
what
6.
it meant. Like when you check off the box, it's saying it's more than 100 feet outside of a drinking well, but it's not. I just didn't know if there was any difference between it being more than 50 feet outside of our well versus 100 feet outside of well, because that basin or whatever that filtration system is going to be within 100 feet of our well.
Right. So yeah, so those ones are, as I think you just mentioned, are intended to substantiate the design of the stormwater system and not the leaching field for the wastewater.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure, where do we check that box? I'm not seeing that box. Is it on the plan somewhere?
On soil test document called soil test 1. I think it's pages 2 and 3, TH5 and TH6. It just, everything is checked as everything over the minimum on this. It says over 100 feet, over 100 feet. But when I looked at C1.1, it does have it within, outside of 50 feet, but inside of 100 feet.
Right.
Greg, the question's related to the DEP form. I think it's form 12 that has the formal logging of the test holes in the summary sheet.
Yeah, I apologize for that. And so typically we use soil evaluator forms for septic systems, and you very rarely test within 100 feet of a well. So I think what you have there is a inadvertent carryover checkbox that is on most of those forms when we send them out. And so we will correct that. But those test holes are to substantiate the drainage basin and not the wastewater system. So while they are not outside of the 100 feet, they're not for a leaching field, which would be required to be outside of that 100-foot arc.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just didn't know if that was a threshold line or not. So I just wanted to make sure.
For typically it is. So we use those wastewater, we use those forms. They're meant for the Title V. They're forms that are associated with Title V and septic systems, where we just kind of use them for drainage in practice. So I apologize for that confusion.
All right, can I jump in real quick?
Sure.
Just to make sure that you better understands. So the design that is going to be placed there is for the infiltration system of the stormwater. The stormwater is basically capturing the runoff from the road and the houses. And as it works its way through the soil, it basically it becomes clean as it goes to the soil. Septic systems, as the effluent from the sewage that's coming through, that is more of a critical concern for the separation. So as Greg was saying, usually those forms are used for septic system designs. The soil testing is a similar process, but one is for stormwater compared to the wastewater. So just so you understand that this is definitely for a stormwater system and not a wastewater system, and the water is clean by the time it gets to the groundwater after going through a stormwater system, and it should not impact your well in any way.
Great, wonderful. Thank you so much.
So Brittany, did that answer? You had a second.
Oh, I could follow up on her question about the stockpile area. Or unless, Jim, did you talk about that?
I did. She had,
Okay.
She had a concern that the nearest stockpile to her home,
Right,
on the weekends or after hours, if it's not being used, we could tarp it. She's worried about dust.
Yeah.
I know she put in
Yeah.
a beautiful patio recently, and she's
Right.
done a lot of
Right.
improvements to her home, so I get her concerns.
well, and I guess I wanted to assure you too, that actually is, Seth mentioned it earlier, relative to erosion control. We have to file what's called a stormwater pollution prevention plan and prepare a stormwater pollution prevention plan and file a notice of intent with the Environmental Protection Agency prior to work on the site. And all control of stockpiles and dust control and runoff from the site and erosion and those kind of things are all regulated under that permit process. So I guess I wanted to assure the butter that there is another whole environmental regulation that exists sort of over the top of this board that has to be in place prior to construction that governs that process too. So there's good checks and balances in place for that.
Perfect.
Great, thank you.
So of all your, so all four of your items that Brittany are responding to.
Yep, thank you.
Yep, perfect. Okay.
Can I ask a quick question about the SWIP? Does that come to the town before construction begins or before permitting? Because I think you have to have the permit to really get into the details of the SWIP. Is that correct? I just don't know what the order is.
Yeah, some of the parts of the SWIP, we actually need to have the actual people that are going to be physically on the ground working on it and report those on the form so that EPA knows it. So typically what we're seeing most towns do, although it's not a requirement of that permit process, but a lot of towns are just placing a condition in the approval that we provide the town a copy of the SWIP documentation when it's filed or when it's prepared, so that you know, and we satisfy that condition, and you know that condition is satisfied. But technically speaking, it's not really a town process. It's an EPA process, really.
Yeah. So my follow-up question to that is that for the periodic inspections that are required by the SWIP, who reviews those and where do you submit those? Is that something, I mean, that the town should have a copy of those, but I'm curious who is responsible, I guess, in the town for reviewing those to make sure they're compliant.
So
Can I jump in again? Only you, frequently the Conservation Commission, the Planning Board, or the Zoning Board has a condition of approval requiring the applicant and the contractor to submit those forms to the board, and they can be done weekly, because basically the stormwater pollution prevention plan that they need to prepare as far as their NIPD's notice of intent permit that Greg explained they have to check off a box with their notice of intent saying that they prepared it. So they have to submit the application 14 days prior to land disturbance. So it's something that the contractor is doing. They have all their other permits from the town, and then the contractor has to get this notice of intent from EPA. So at that same time, they can provide the town with the stormwater pollution prevention plan. They can provide it electronically. You can require them to provide it 2 weeks before. You can review it. The Conservation Commission might review it. Frequently, it falls in the Conservation Commission's kind of their jurisdiction. And then you can also require that they submit their weekly SWIP forms that they basically kind of put in that stormwater pollution, it's kind of part of the package.
Yeah.
And they can just submit it to you electronically, and you just have a folder, and Valerie, I'm sure, would be happy to keep all those forms.
And that would be a condition of the permit approval then?
Yeah, it can be a condition of your approval, or sometimes it's the Conservation Commission, because if they're within their jurisdiction, frequently that it falls under them, but it can be under yours as well, and it's just the town, so it can go to anybody.
Okay.
I think we've seen it in prior decisions that we have that as a condition. So,
Pretty common nowadays to
Mhm.
sort of be submitting the SWIP to the whatever approval the authority that you got, and also copy them on weekly SWIP inspections, or there's a couple different, depending on the site, there's a couple different ways you can inspect different schedules, but they're stipulated by the SWIP. So
So Brittany, is your hand still up, or is it
Sorry.
just in my screen? Okay, perfect. Just want to be sure you didn't have a follow-up. All right, so then if we're at a good static point for question and answers, and let's go back to Valerie on the calendar issue.
Yeah, I think just looking at my schedule, the week of June 6th looks good.
Okay. How about board members? Is June 6th, what is that date? Just so I can.
That's a Monday.
Okay, so June
The
6th.
board is also already meeting on Tuesday, May 31st for the 113 Still River Road special permit. So if you wanted to kind of tack this on to that, but otherwise I think looking at June 6th makes sense.
Yeah, I think looking in that June 6th, only because some of the things that we may be looking for would be coming in later in May, and I don't want to bump that up too much where we got to get the same day in our hearing, because then that just, we don't always get to see it if it doesn't come in timely, then so the week of June 6th, does anyone have a preference on date schedule wise? I'm pretty flexible.
I'm okay except for Wednesday, so.
Can we not do June 7th? Because that's my birthday. And no offense,
no.
but I'd rather not be on a call for my birthday. That's a tough day anyway for me because it's a Tuesday, but I can do anything else that week.
So is Monday the 6th work for folks?
That works for me.
Yes.
That works for me too.
All right, so why don't we schedule 6 at 6 p.m. or should we do it 6:30? I don't like 6 together. Unless the board has a.
Yeah, that could be an issue.
Yeah.
6:30 works for me. It's a little tight at 6.
Okay, 6:30.
You do 6:04 or something, then no one will forget it.
Yeah, right. Right, 666 and 606. Right, yeah. So let's do 6:30 on June 6th. A motion to.
I make a motion that we continue the hearing till June 6th at 6:30.
Okay.
Second.
And those in favor, Brad Reed,
Aye.
Andy Kishitz,
Aye.
Gerard Ahern,
Aye.
Gabrielle Lamano,
Yes.
and Elizabeth Hutchins.
Yes. Do we have to extend this hearing? Did this one end
My
June
question too.
5th?
Yeah,
Yes.
so they, the applicant said that we'd extend to July 5th.
July 5th, yes.
Right, and so we'll get a letter from Jim on that.
Yep.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate the time.
Likewise,
Thank you.
all right. So, good night, Jen. So we just need to, do we have any minutes or anything, Valerie?
No, there should be at least one set ready next or
Thanks.
probably on Thursday, thanks to Kristen with the building department.
Oh, perfect. Okay,
Yeah.
so then.
Quick
Motion to
question,
adjourn.
did we reschedule the Thursday meeting next week? You wanted to move it to,
I am waiting to get that confirmed by the applicant, make sure that still works with their schedule. But we will still meet on Thursday for 7-11 to 713 Main Street. So.
okay,
Will that count as a missed meeting if the hearing is like extended for me? Because
No.
we wouldn't be discussing anything, just because I can't
Right.
make that meeting.
Right, it does not count as if there's no testimony, if there's no discussion, the board doesn't talk about it, it's not a missed meeting.
Perfect. So I'll only fill it out then for the other discussion.
Exactly, yeah.
So then do we just need a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Liz.
seconded,
And those in favor, Brad Reed,
yes.
Andy Kishitz,
Yes.
Gerard Ahern,
Yes?
Elizabeth Hutchins,
Yes.
and Gabriella Amano.
Yes.
Right.
All right.
so
Thank you
7:43.
all.
Thanks, folks. Bye, Britt.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Okay.
Bye.